So I didn't think I'd be making this video today, but here we are. Jamahal Hill just said that he is injured. He ruptured his Achilles, and now he will not be fighting Jiri Prochazka for the light heavyweight world championship. And also, he won't be the light heavyweight world champion. He's vacating his belt, and now there's people talking about a potential Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira title fight being added to UFC 291, where Blachowicz versus Pereira is already happening, but people are saying now to put the title on the line so they can crown a champion at 291. I'm not sure if I agree with this move, so I'm going to talk about what I think they're going to do next, and also talk about this whole situation at light heavyweight, because that belt seems cursed. It's almost like John Jones is the only man allowed to ever be a light heavyweight world champion since he first touched that belt and went on his run, because we had Jiri Prochazka become a light heavyweight world champion and people were finally saying, oh my God, now we're going to have some sort of like return to normalcy in the light heavyweight division. This is going to restore order at light heavyweight. And then boom, Jiri Prochazka's injured, out for ages, vacates the belt so the division can move on. And then Jamahal Hill becomes champion, and it's like, okay, once we've done Jamahal Hill versus Jiri Prochazka, then the division will return to normal and we'll have a champion defending their belt over and over again and staying active. And then boom, Jamahal Hill's injured and decides to vacate the belt as well. Now, I'm going to say a thing here at the start. If Jamahal Hill genuinely had a choice over whether or not he wanted to vacate the belt, major props to Jamahal Hill. You know I like Jamahal Hill. I stuck up for him in the whole aerial situation. If he had a choice. Now, I keep hearing, Jiri Prochazka chose to vacate his light heavyweight world championship. Jamahal Hill has chosen to vacate his light heavyweight world championship. But I think it's really weird how this was not a thing that used to happen. You know what I mean? If a champion got injured, they'd make an interim title fight, and then they'd unify the belts afterwards at a fight at a later date. But the last two light heavyweight champions that get injured are both now vacating their belt. Although I do want to give Jamahal Hill major props if he did choose to vacate the belt, I feel like there's a lot of pressure from the UFC for them to do that, right? There must be. Maybe it's not explicitly the UFC saying, if you don't vacate the belt, we're going to strip it from you anyway, so you better vacate it so it looks good on your end. I don't think the UFC is saying that, but I think the UFC is, being a lot happier with Jamahal Hill or Jiri Prochazka if they do decide to vacate the belt so they can then have another world championship bout. Because let's not forget, if not for Jiri being so nice and vacating the belt, that would be a really weak Brazilian pay-per-view at the start of this year in January, where Jamahal Hill did end up beating Glover Teixeira and becoming a world champion. So I do think the UFC is heavily advising them to vacate their championships and then promising title fights at a later date. But at this point, we're in a worrying area where the UFC might go in debt for favors that they're giving out. You know what I mean? The UFC genuinely might end up in a backlog of promised title fights to former champions who have got injured and vacating their belt. So, here's the situation. I don't think you can make Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira for the interim belt. I don't think you can. I don't think that's the move. I see a lot of people calling for it, and don't get me wrong, it would make the 291 pay-per-view a much bigger deal. But I think you can't make a fight that you are already basically admitting is not title fight level, because otherwise one of them would be fighting for the title anyway. You know what I mean? Or it'd be for an interim belt if you were realizing that it was title fight level. You can't have a fight that you've made as a contenders matchup all of a sudden become a title fight for the vacant world championship. So although I think they might do the Blachowicz-Pereira fight for a world championship, I've never liked the idea of someone coming off a loss fighting for a belt. I don't like the idea of someone coming off one win fighting for a belt. You know what I mean? I really don't like that. I think you should at least be on a win streak if you're going to fight for a championship. Now, there is different scenarios where one of them might be a former champion, like Oliveira is not going to have to build 3 wins together before he gets another title shot at lightweight. Like, there is some value in you of being a champion before you end up trying to work your way back up to a title shot. Of course, that's going to slow the build down. And maybe Blachowicz is deserving of a title fight because, You know, he was in a title fight in his last fight against Ankalaev, who we're also going to talk about in today's video, because that is someone who all of a sudden everyone's forgotten about, and I'm very happy about that. I think Ankalaev needs to beat Rakic, and then we can talk title elimination bouts. You know what I mean? Let me see him beat Rakic, then Walker, and maybe he can earn a shot against Bilal Muhammad at a catchweight bout. You know, I'm not trying to say that we should really clearly forget about Magomed Ankalaev and just let him slip into irrelevancy. Otherwise, he'll ruin the pay-per-view power that maybe the light heavyweight champion could have. But I'm saying we should forget about Ankalaev and let him fade into irrelevancy and let him fight someone else for a contenders matchup instead. This is going to cause a logjam. Obviously, the blatant move that you have to make is just let Blachowicz versus Pereira be a normal matchup for a number one contender fight. The winner of that can then fight for the vacant world title against Jiri Prochazka, who already was talking about returning in October, in November, December. Like, they were talking about maybe him fighting in August, and that was a little bit too soon for him. So I'm assuming he doesn't want to go to Australia. Maybe it'll be an October fight night, or maybe an October pay-per-view. It would make sense to do that if Jan Blachowicz wins. He's fought in Abu Dhabi before, and of course, a lot easier for Polish fans to get there than it is across the Atlantic Ocean. So I do think they're going to do the winner of Blachowicz versus Pereira versus Jiri Prochazka at the end of the year, in November, in December, maybe even pushing it forward to October if Jan Blachowicz is going to be ready, or if Pereira's going to be ready and he dusts Blachowicz in one round. I'm still not sure who I'm going to pick in that matchup. But I think the ideal circumstance, let's be real here, although I would love a Blachowicz versus Prochazka matchup for a title fight, let's be real, the ideal matchup is Alex Pereira versus Jiri Prochazka, and then the winner takes on maybe a moving up Adesanya. So Jamahal Hill, although he has been promised a title fight upon his return, there might be some complications with that if the timing doesn't work out the way the UFC wants it to, because you best believe if Adesanya, I'm not saying he beats Stricker, I mean, there's a good likelihood that he does, but I'm not just guaranteeing that. It's a close fight. But if Adesanya wins his next two fights and there's no one else at middleweight for him and it's time to move up, because let's be real, Adesanya's getting close to GOAT status at middleweight. So once he's achieved that in the next few fights, people are going to want to test out that light heavyweight move once again. So if Adesanya finds himself wanting to move up just after the title fight between Jiri Prochazka and Alex Pereira, I don't think Jamahal Hill's actually going to get I don't think he's actually going to get that reservation to fight for a belt. I think they're going to move aside Jamahal Hill and then say, Jamahal Hill, you fight Ankalaev and promise if you win, you'll get a title shot. But at the end of the day, money talks. And Jamahal Hill wasn't the biggest of names. So I don't know if he's made the right move by vacating here. If it really was his choice, why not let him try and do an interim belt type situation instead? You know what I mean? So I don't know if this is going to work out for him. It would have worked out for Jiri, and it still will work out for Jiri. I believe he will get a title shot upon his return. Timing-wise, no one at heavyweight's moving down, no one at middleweight's moving up. It's just the light heavyweight division that they've got to sort out, and Jiri is the most deserving. He was the champion, never lost a belt. So, for Jiri, I think it'll work out. But for Jamahal Hill, maybe the timing's a bit off, and Adesanya will take precedent over Jamahal Hill. Let's be real. But I think they should do that. Winner of Blachowicz versus Pereira for a title shot against Jiri Prochazka in November, MSG. But they might have to do it in October, because Makhachev might not be fighting in October. Because who the hell is going to fight Makhachev in October? Volk's got to have arm surgery. Oliveira's not ready. I guess he picked up an injury in his training camp against Beneil Dariush, which we knew about. That fight camp got delayed due to an injury in the middle of it. So he's not ready for a quick turnaround after his fight with Dariush. The winner of Poirier Gaethje is the last savior for a Makhachev title fight in October, I think, because other than that, it's Arman Tsarukyan, and I don't think that's the best time to do that title fight. I mean, it would have almost been better if you did the title fight before Arman Tsarukyan even fought Joaquin Silva, because then there was still this sort of aura that Arman could be something great. But after the Joaquin Silva fight, after seeing him get wobbled and lost round 2, it's kind of like, maybe he was a bit overrated, and now the hype's gone down a bit. So I don't think it's the right time for Arman to get the shot. Maybe they do the winner of Poirier Gaethje in October, but maybe they just try and rush ahead the winner of Blachowicz-Pereira, for a title fight in October. And I could see that happening because I don't see Blachowicz-Pereira being a war. I think it's either going to be a few different things in that fight. I think either Pereira absolutely destroys him in round 1. Pereira survives being ground and pounded in the first 2 rounds and taken down, and then sort of goes on to a somewhat slowed down Jan Blachowicz on altitude at elevation at UFC 291, and then he gets to finish in the 3rd round. I don't see it being a back and forth, both guys getting dropped type situation. So I think the winner of that fight is going to be quite healthy. You know, if Jan wins, he'll probably just dominate it on the ground, or maybe put the fear of the takedown so much in Pereira's head that he just KOs him on the feet. It's going to be a clear win either way. So I think they're going to be ready for a quick turnaround. But yeah, sucks for Jamahal Hill. Let's talk about like how long he's going to be off for as well, because I've watched enough NBA to know that a ruptured Achilles is a devastating injury to have. It's a very intricate muscle to have an injury for, and it's a very important muscle that you can't really work around, right? If you have a sore bicep, or you know, something happens to you break your forearm, or you hurt your shoulder, or you know, anything like that that's on a limb that's not really entirely necessary, you can still jog, you can still work around it, you know, you can still get in shape, you can stay in shape while it recovers. That's what Volk's talking about doing. He's trying to maybe rush for the Makhachev fight. He said he wants to get the surgery, stay in shape around it because it's only his arm, and then it'll be ready by the time the fight comes around. But for Jamahal Hill, he ain't going to really be able to do anything with a ruptured Achilles. I mean, I'm looking up the recovery time. Ruptured Achilles recovery time surgery. I'm seeing 4 to 6 months after surgery, depending on the surgery you have. I'm imagining that Jamahal Hill's going to get the best treatment from the UFC. So we're at least looking at 4 months off. So, and that's before he even starts like getting back into normal activities. That's not getting back into sparring and getting ready for a fight. So I don't think we'll see Jamahal Hill in a training camp until March of next year, April of next year, maybe to return in the middle of next year. So best of luck to Jamahal Hill. Terrible situation for him, but that is rough. That is a rough injury to suffer. And it's not the best for Jamahal Hill, because I'll tell you this. This is why you stay in shape all year round. I'm not trying to poke at Jamahal Hill while he's down, but I'm worried that a similar thing can happen to a Paddy Pimblett. These guys, we saw a picture of Jamahal Hill with the belly out, you know what I mean? And he's not in ideal shape, and he massively gains a bunch of weight in between training camps and fights. This is the problem with, like, I bet you Jamahal Hill was probably on the verge of having that Jiri Prochazka fight announced in October or November, right? We were probably just about to hear that information before he came out and broke this news. So I'm sure he was just like trying to get back into shape for a training camp coming up soon. And that's the problem. When you start getting back into hard work, when you're not in shape, you got to start your training camps in shape. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you are going to exert yourself too much and run into these injuries. So maybe I was just stupid to not even think this was a possibility. But arguably, in hindsight, the way Jamahal Hill's been treating his off-season, we should have kind of seen the injuries coming, is what I'm saying. Maybe. So maybe this will be a lesson to Jamahal Hill. Sometimes you need this. Maybe this will be good for Jamahal Hill. Maybe he needs this. Because, you know, sometimes people get attached to the belt. But once you lose it, maybe it doesn't mean as much. So you're not thinking about it as much. And you might have a better mindset going into certain fights after this. He can get some clarity from this. Sitting on the sidelines, realizing it's not all that important. He's just going to get back in there whenever he gets in there, taking away the importance of fighting for a belt as much. When you lose it to like some silliness, it almost feels like crazy to you. Like, oh, okay, well, it doesn't mean anything then. Well, you just lose. I know you get a bit depressed, but it almost brings a reality of like nothing really matters to you. So maybe this will teach Jamahal Hill. We'll maybe see him in better shape outside of training camps from now on. Maybe there'll be a positive thing to come out of this, but that is a rough injury to come back for, a ruptured Achilles, especially in a division where, you know, you got guys like Rakic and Jan Blachowicz who are going to be chopping at your legs in fights. And Jamahal Hill's biggest weakness, in my opinion, I know it's not really been proven yet, but the way he stands and what we saw in some moments of the OSP fight, he is open to leg kicks. So it's going to be something that people target when he comes back anyway. Best of luck in his recovery, though. I hope he gets right back in there, right back to work. Maybe middle of next year, we'll see Jamahal Hill again. But that's the move, in my opinion. Don't make Blachowicz Pereira for a title fight. You can't have Pereira fighting for a belt at light heavyweight coming off a loss. Because even if they win the belt and then the winner fights Jiri, people are still going to see it as Jiri, the champion's coming back, and these guys who randomly have a belt are going to fight him to see if they are really the champion. You know what I mean? That would just be silly to do. So I think hold back, leave Blachowicz Pereira the way it is. You don't want to randomly have to change their pay grade on short notice. I know that, UFC. I think you get as much value out of it. I know there's going to be a little bit of added value if you do put the title on the line. But I don't think it's going to be a crazy amount. You know what I mean? I think it might, add a couple extra pay-per-view buys, a couple tens of thousands extra, maybe another 20,000 pay-per-view buys. But I think just hold out and have a big title fight at the end of the year with the winner of that versus Jiri Prochazka. Unfortunate for Jamahal Hill, though. Absolutely unfortunate, because it's not like he's incredibly young. I think Jamahal Hill is he might be, though. I think he's 32. He's 32 years of age, just turned 32. But this is bad, right? Because he is in his prime right now. He just looked the best he's ever looked. And now, boom, he's going to be out until the middle of 2024. Jiri's already responded as well. I saw a post from him saying, recover champ, I know what you're going through, or some stuff like that. And all this. Winner of Blachowicz Pereira for the belt. He was even insinuating that. So I think based on all of the promises the UFC have given, the fact that they said Jiri will be in a title fight when he comes back as well, I think it'd be best for them to hold back on making the title fight at 291. Just have it be a contenders matchup. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip. And also, I much rather 3-rounders at altitude anyway at 290. So if that's any consolation as well, just to keep this fight a 3-rounder rather than seeing a 5-rounder. I hate 5-rounders at altitude. I don't like it at all. I don't like it being about, who prepared for the altitude. I'd rather know who the better fighter is. You know what I mean? So I'm hoping it stays as a non-title fight. Toodle pip. See you later. Goodbye. Forget about Ankalaev. He can fight Rakic. Also in October. Maybe he can be the backup opponent for the title shot. Who knows? But he's going to have to earn his title shot back. You know what I'm saying? I need to see him go on a 3-fight streak. See you later. Goodbye.